It's Friday, August 23rd, 2024, and Fridays are Ask or Tell Me Anything, next on the AM Update. Well, welcome to another completed week on the AM Update. I've made this comment. I'm from the Midwest. I have to make small talk either about the weather or how fast time is moving forward. So I can't believe we are now encroaching the final week of August. This year has just shot by. And thank you for spending it with me for a few minutes every single morning here on AM Update. So last night was kind of a big wet fart in terms of the surprise guest that the DNC was supposed to pull out. There were rumors from everybody from George W. Bush to Mitt Romney to Beyonce to Taylor Swift. Unless you count Adam Kinzinger, former Republican representative from Illinois, as a surprise guest. That was kind of a wet fart. So that kind of concluded last night. Kamala Harris is now officially the Democrat nominee for president without anyone having cast a single vote for her. All right, Ask or Tell Me Anything. Thank you for all your wonderful submissions. Always enjoy going through these each and every week. We'll begin with this from Troy Allen Furcho. I love Kamala-gook, but would you ever consider Tim AWOLs? Left my home state because of the demonization of Minnesota. Yeah, Tim AWOLs. I mean, that's kind of fitting given that he kind of went AWOL. I guess maybe a certain flavor of AWOL, trying to skip town before his unit was deployed to Iraq, as was the allegation, and seems to be pretty well-founded allegations. Tim AWOLs, that's not bad. Banana Republic says, do you think that companies like John Deere, Tractor Supply, and Harley Davidson are saying publicly that they're doing away with DEI initiatives but are actually maintaining those policies privately? I think that could be happening. I still think it's a positive development, at least outwardly. They recognize how harmful and destructive this could be to their bottom line. I think that's a positive development. I think nobody wants to be the next Bud Light. I hope that activists like Robbie Starbuck and others keep up the pressure and just don't completely shut down their cases on any of these companies. Make sure that they actually follow through on these things, because if they're not, that's going to come out one way or another, and that's going to look as bad as it looks now when they embrace these types of things. It would look 2 or 3 times worse if they actually didn't do that. But Banana Republic, your concern there is not unfounded, because Katie actually came up with this one. This is a piece of news that she wants us to be aware of. She says, it seems like University of Nebraska-Lincoln might be doing the same thing, just under a different name. Now, what is that same thing? I told you yesterday, or maybe it was earlier this week, about the University of Nebraska dropping their diversity and inclusion office and changing up its executive leadership team. Chancellor Rodney Bennett in the Office of Diversity, or said of the Office of Diversity, that they're going to reimagine how they approach this work at UNL. That was in that statement he released earlier this week. So, yeah, that leaves the door open to doing the same thing, just under a different name. So, yeah, Banana Republic and Katie, your concerns are not unfounded. Now, let's go to this now from Rob Depp. What's your opinion on this? This is the AI rendition of the visage, allegedly, of Jesus Christ based on the Shroud of Turin. I have no idea if this is actually true, or if somebody just found, what is it called? It looks like the hipster style of photo. Can't even remember the name of it. It just looks like a photo of a depiction of Jesus Christ. Somebody could have just found a photo of that, said, hey, AI came up with this, and they're running with it. I don't know. Okay. You can't believe everything you see online. Don't really have a huge opinion on that. I haven't shared publicly my thoughts on the Shroud of Turin. I guess I can now, just because I brought this up and you asked about it. I haven't shared it publicly because it sounds really whiny and really like hyper pious, and I can't stand people who sound like that, and I don't mean it to. But here's my position on it. I don't really care. There are people who are very, very, very opposed to the Shroud of Turin, actually, the notion that it could be real. There are people who are really, really opposed to the notion that there are people out there who don't completely buy the Shroud of Turin. You know, I'm not dogmatic one way or the other. I'm open to it being a real thing that's actually 2,000 years old. Okay, I'm open to that being real. Here's my problem with it, though. What's the purpose of the Shroud of Turin? Bueller. What's the purpose? Okay, we already have just incredible volumes of historical accounts that Jesus Christ is and was a real person. We have innumerable sources that take that into account. So what's the purpose of the Shroud of Turin? I would dare say that the purpose of the Shroud of Turin is, at its best, just archaeological, a best stab, if it's really real, a best stab at archaeological evidence that Jesus Christ had a ministry on earth, or that somebody who was crucified, dating around the same time, in the same exact way, that it's something like that. I think at worst it is designed, or not designed, but I think at worst it is used to invoke an emotional response, which automatically, because I have the emotional depth of Spock, that raises my alarm bells. You tell me, what would be more profitable in this day and age? What would be more profitable? The photographic negative of allegedly Jesus Christ on a really old piece of cloth, or a photographic negative of Jesus Christ placed upon the character, words, and actions of the current Pope? What's more profitable? I think you know the answer to that, but I'll let you decide. Let's move on. Let's go to Cavalier. I'm disgusted to the point of vomiting with quote-unquote influencers. If Trump loses this thing, we not only need excommunications on our side, we need exorcisms. The absolute vile Gus Walls attacks is the last straw. Leave the family, even the mobsters, leave the families out of it. He's a minor. He's got I think a learning disability, some sort of autism. And he's just really happy. He's really proud of his dad. I think his dad is a psychopath. But that's just a kid that's really proud of his dad and really happy in that moment. And the vile things that I've seen is just... I've been on the receiving end of this to some degree with these influencers. I mean, they've taken photos of Ben and made fun of him. There's no depth. There's no end to the depth of the depravity. I'm not trying to both sides of this thing, but if we're supposed to be the party of truth, or at least the side of truth, justice, and the American way, can we have some standards? The answer to that question is apparently no. Bo says Elon Musk recently conducted a super unscientific poll on X asking the public who they'll vote for, with millions of viewers and votes cast. How much weight do you think the results of that poll carries, and how does it compare to the polling we're seeing elsewhere in media? It doesn't carry any weight at all. Doesn't carry any weight at all. And to compare it to the polls in the media, I would put the polls in the media as bad as those have been, in a much higher regard than something tweeted out by Elon Musk that is an opt-in poll from a very small segment of the American population, that is X. Steve says, I'm glad to see the jobless numbers in the news, but I don't think that tells the true story. Here's why. My former company had global headcounts of 150,000 2 years ago. They're now down to 110 or 120,000. When they report cuts, they only say things like 5,000 cut, etc. He goes on to say they have a stated goal to get headcount down even more. You can't believe even the numbers corporations publish on their own. Well, I'm glad to no longer be employed by this toxic company. I'll admit I've never seen a job market this bad in my lifetime. By the time a job posting hits one of the job boards, it'll have thousands of applications in 1 hour. Doesn't matter how good someone fits a role, you have to play the algorithm game with LinkedIn and also the proper keyword game for resume scanners. All of this talk about bringing in H-1B workers doesn't make sense either. What's the point when there's no jobs for them either? Remote positions are still very prominent. This is because it's cheaper to employ someone remote in another country than someone who lives in the U.S. Think about this. Job seekers are now not competing with just others in their city or state, but with worldwide job markets. STEM jobs are not safe, so if you have influence on a young person in high school or college, I'd not encourage a STEM education. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'll be fine mind and I'm trying to remain positive. I'm getting better at playing the algorithm game. Just wanted to provide an anecdote of what people are going through in this new world. I have no reason to believe that what you're saying, Steph, is not accurate. Far from it. 818,000, a revision of 818,000 jobs, revising that downwards. That's the biggest downward revision since the Great Recession, as I pointed out yesterday. And if that's the number that they're saying publicly, how bad do you actually think it is? Actually. Sorry, boy, I lived out that meme there. But seriously, how bad do you think the actual number is? If that's what they're reporting publicly, 818,000, how bad is it actually? The entire economy, for the most part, at least from the big corporations, is geared 180 degrees opposite of giving the advantage to the average American. And Steph, I'm sorry that it really should not be this hard. And I don't know where you live. It looks like, based on your profile picture, maybe Texas. I don't know. And if that was Texas, where it's really hard to find a job, yeah, you bet your sweet bippy. It's a really bad job market out there right now. At least for jobs that pay enough for you to be able to make a living and maybe get ahead. Sorry about that, Steph. Let's go to this. Tiny Johnny asks, what happens to the Republican Party if Kamala wins? They will become, I think, as bad or worse than the Tories almost overnight. You're going to have a very small faction and it is going to be a small faction, I believe, of Donald Trump supporters, really, dyed in the wool to the death type supporters. But they're going to be extremely marginalized and extremely demoralized. Now, I think what takes their place is probably the Nikki Haley types. Hey, we tried this for 12 years now, or however long it will have been. Tried this for 8 years now. MAGA doesn't work. And you know what? The part of that is frustratingly true. If you can't beat Kamala Harris, people are never going to buy what you're selling. Sorry. And going back to the excommunications of certain influencers on the right. Yeah, that needs to happen. Will it happen, though? Probably not. Here's what I think is going to happen. And there's already, you know what? No. I'm not going to say that. Just hope that Trump wins. Let's just hope Trump wins. That's where I am. These conversations we can have if the alternative result happens. And there will be more than enough time to talk about that then. Nostradumbass says, love that name. We saw Josh Garrels opening for John Mark McMillan's Borderland 17 tour, all-time favorite album, and was an instant fan. Very low-key politically, so you'd never know, but also not woke virtue signaling. Also, did you mention both your kids have the same birthday? Crazy. No, they don't have the same... Well, they do have the same birthday in terms of the 14th. They're just exactly, 4 months apart. Yeah, 4 months apart. So Abby in April, Ben in August, and then I was also born on the 14th. So 3 out of the 4 of us were born on the 14th. Just crazy. Speaking of children, Uncomfortably Dumb says, were the terrible twos an issue with Ben because my 3-year-old never had the terrible twos and has instead opted for the terrible threes? Uncomfortably Dumb. It's funny, we've had this conversation in our household a few times over the last 6 months or so because it was kind of the terrible 2.5s. It seems like Ben is maybe turning a corner with testing boundaries and listening and obeying. But yeah, coming up on his 3rd birthday, I would definitely classify those as the terrible 3s. Around the time he was 2 years old, he was as sweet as could be. Still didn't really know how to test boundaries, didn't really know how, so he didn't want to. But no, we've had this exact same observation and talked about this a few times in our household, definitely. Let's see. Patent Pete says, one thing I haven't heard anyone mention about the wealth tax is that it'll create a death spiral of inflation, unrealized gains, wealth tax revenue, increased government spending, more inflation. Repeat until all assets are sold to pay the tax. You will own nothing. Yep. No matter how you slice it, no matter how you disambiguate, if I'm even using that word correctly, it's that's the end. It's the end of the economy if they actually follow through with this. And lefties will come back and say, oh, no, the unrealized gains thing or the wealth tax is only for those with a net worth of $100 million or more. I saw this chart the other day of the introductory income tax rate in the U.S. from some over 100 years ago. Yeah, that was a pretty good deal that wasn't a bad deal for the middle and lower class then. How is it now? How is it now? Not a great deal. Not a great deal at all. So no matter how you spin this, no matter how you try to put a spoonful of sugar on this thing, it's disaster. It's absolute disaster. It will completely, the middle class is already hollowed out in this country. It'll eliminate it. And it will eliminate portions of the upper class as well. The lower tax brackets of the upper class. Like I'm talking about $1 to $5 million people in terms of income. That's going to wipe them out too. It's going to wipe them out. So yeah, better hope Trump doesn't screw this up. Mr. Bob Dabalina, I think it's going to be fascinating to watch Robert Kennedy Jr. speak Friday, have a buddy who hates Trump but loves RFK and also realizes how dangerous the left is. I'm anxious to hear his reaction. Do you think RFK voters flood to Trump or stay home? I would say I think Trump. I think 60%. I would guess. I'm not really guessing this on anything other than intuition. I would guess around 60% of RFK Jr.'s supporters come from the right, or who would traditionally align themselves with the right. Okay, I think 40% maybe would come from the left. Maybe that's a high number, but I think 40%. I think the people who are coming from the left I think half of them are going to stay home, half of them will vote for Kamala Harris, and I think that's true probably of 3/4 of the right side of RFK Jr.'s support. 3/4 of them will probably move on to Donald Trump. 1/4 of them will probably stay home. That's just my gut instinct, intuition based on no data whatsoever. Let's see. Let us go to Alex Pfeiffer. I posted the Clear Truth Media, great follow, by the way, new news outlet on the right, kind of doing what Christianity Today and the Gospel Coalition should be doing. I posted the Clear Truth Media article on Francis Collins in a Facebook Christian group, and I was blown away by how many in the group defended Collins and attacked the article by saying it was garbage and nothing true in it. Should I be shocked at this? More signs that the American churches are failing, I suppose. Yep. This doesn't require too much more commentary. I don't know what group you were in, but... And it's not that big of a surprise. I don't want to sound like I'm any degree of self-righteous here. It pains me. It pains me what Francis Collins has revealed himself to be. It pains me. Because when I was younger, I looked up to people like that. I thought, how cool is it, even at a Barack Obama administration, that Francis Collins gets to do what he does. I thought that spoke to his testimony, that he was basically, I don't want to say unassailable, but he was beyond reproach, that even a Marxist like Barack Obama couldn't help but notice that this guy is doing some truly extraordinary things in the field of science. Well, as it turns out, it's actually Francis Collins had more in common with Barack Obama than he did with an actual Christian. That's why he got to do the things he did in Barack Obama's government. So, it pains me. So I don't want to sound all high and mighty here like I've always known this about Francis Collins. No, it pains me. It disappoints me. It makes me upset. All right, finally, let's end with this. Country Squire asks, what food have you never tried but always wanted to? This is easy for me, and it was really tempting to, but I know it's got gluten in it, so I can't do it. But I saw some poutine stands at the Iowa State Fair a couple of weeks ago. Man, I think it's a Canadian food. That stuff looks really good. I think it's like, it's French fries or maybe it's waffle fries. I think there's, let me look up the ingredients. It just looks good. I think there's like mashed potatoes. What are the ingredients to poutine? So yeah, it looks like potato wedges, cheese curds, and gravy. So no potatoes. French fries, cheese curds, and gravy. Oh, man. That sounds really good. So I've never tried that before, but I would like to. Good question to end on. All right, we'll be back at it again. My wife and I tomorrow on, wife Bella and I tomorrow on No Suck Saturday. We've got 5 objectively good news stories, 5 stories that don't suck. Continuing on in our book study and a lot of other fun things as well. Thank you for all of your questions and submissions this week on Ask or Tell Me Anything. Always appreciate them. Always appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much for listening to another week on the AM Update. For those of you who are non-subscribers, we'll be back at it again on Monday.